Hey everybody, I am AV Obsessed, and if you're watching this video on my channel, that means that you probably are too. And today, I am finally doing my review of the SVS SB-5000 and comparing it to the older SB-4000. So first of all, starting off with the grills on, which in my house, the grills are never on except for when I'm making videos about these speakers and subwoofers. But on the SB-5000, they have gone to the much more conventional and I think boring looking, just regular black cloth grill. I'm sure that most people are gonna be happy about this change, but my opinion, I liked the old metal grill better. It was definitely a lot more unique, but either way, total non-issue for me because I don't use the grills. Now you see what they would look like in an audio enthusiast's house, because if you're an audio enthusiast, you probably don't run the grills. So each cabinet is pretty much identical in size and weight. So you're really looking at almost exactly an 18 by 18 by 18 inch cube. Either way, like whether you have the 4000 or the 5000, the size, exactly the same. The biggest difference is 15-inch glass fiber composite woofer with this giant rubber surround versus 13.5-inch glass fiber composite woofer with a huge rubber surround. And then just the cleaner look of the SB-5000, since it doesn't have the screen and buttons on the front like the SB-4000 did. And that, removing that freed up the space so that they would be able to put the larger woofer into this cabinet. And there's a lot more changes going on with this driver other than just it being a lot larger of a driver. They have gone to a dual voice coil design. So the previous generation had a single voice coil. This one has a dual voice coil. Essentially, I believe that it's two windings along the same former, and it's a double stacked magnet. But that means that they have, instead of just a single amplifier in here, there is essentially a dual mono design amplifier that is putting out 2000 watts RMS, and according to SVS's website, over 5,000 watts of peak power. So that's crazy. That's so much power in a subwoofer, especially one that's not some overly large, massive, 18-inch ported design that you could only fit in a dedicated home theater. I believe that this 18 by 18 by 18-inch cube can pretty easily fit in most living room home theater systems. So as you can see, I have taken apart the SB-5000 and the SB-4000 so you could see what the actual subwoofer drivers themselves look like when the subwoofer is taken apart, and they are unbelievably impressive. The magnet structure, the dual spiders, the dual voice coils on the SB-5000. This thing is a monstrosity of a subwoofer driver. Plate amps you can see right here. This is the one for the 5000. There's the one for the 4000. I'll flip these over in a second so you can see the backside of the amps and the subwoofer drivers, but you can see that the amplifier for the 5000 is a little bit taller than the one for the 4000. And then there's the subwoofer driver for the 4000. Inside the cabinets, they're just very similar. The only real difference is the fact that with the 4000, you've got the cutout for the little control panel at the front of it, and you don't have that on the 5000, but the cabinet itself is largely the same, with about the same amount of bracing and padding on the inside. And it's amazing how much lighter they are when you take them apart and you don't have those giant subwoofer drivers inside of the boxes anymore. All right. Now I got them flipped over on their faces so you could see this monstrous magnet structure, vented pole piece, lots of heat sinking on this subwoofer, dual stacked magnets, dual voice coils, dual spiders, massive suspension system, just a crazy, crazy overbuilt subwoofer. And I mean, the SB-4000 is no slouch too. The magnet structure is about the same size actually, still with also with the vented pole piece and the dual spiders and pretty much the same kind of suspension system, just obviously it doesn't have the dual voice coil system like the SB-5000 does. And then looking at the plate amps from what you would see on the inside of the subwoofer, the SB-5000 here, you can see all the components of the plate amp are exposed to the inside of the subwoofer, and any heat generated by that amp gets vented into the subwoofer, which it's a sealed sub, so it's not really going to get out all that easily. The SB-5000, very different. The entire back of the plate amplifier is sealed in a metal enclosure, because on the actual back, the outside of the plate amp, there's a bunch of holes for the air, the heat generated inside of the plate amp to escape through the holes on the back of the plate amp. So it has to be sealed on the inside, otherwise you would get all that air escaping through those vent holes. So yeah, super impressively, just massively overbuilt subwoofer driver. It's amazing. All right, now I got them flipped around so you can see the back side. Biggest thing I noticed right away is all the ventilation holes on the back panel here. So right away that told me that a big difference between the new one and the previous one is this subwoofer plate amp is sealed on the inside. So it's sealed away from the constant changing air pressure inside of the cabinet, which maybe will make it last longer, although I haven't heard a lot of people complaining about SVS plate amps going out often. It's a pretty common thing with most powered subwoofers. Like if anything's gonna fail in your home theater, it's probably your subwoofer plate amp. But as far as I know, SVS has been pretty reliable. If you guys have had an SVS sub go out on you, put it in the comments. But yeah, I haven't heard a lot of stories about that. So yeah, looking at like the rear I/O, it's actually pretty much identical to the 4000. You got your left and right RCA ins and outs and left and right XLR ins and outs. That way you can daisy chain multiple subwoofers. I'll put an image up of when I did this, but like the second or third day that I had this sub, I did just a silly thing where I stacked the 4000 on top of the 5000 and just used the daisy chaining capability because of the ins and outs. And then you got your screen up here with the up and down and select buttons for changing settings. You got a USB port, which I assume is mostly going to be for updating, although they do over-the-air updates with the app, so I don't know why you would. Maybe that's specifically only for if you send it in for service. And then you've got an IR control in and a 12-volt trigger in. So really the only difference, other than the layout being different on the SB-4000, is this one doesn't have that IR in. It only has the 12-volt trigger input there. But other than that, you still have your left and right RCA ins and outs, and then you get your XLR ins and outs. And then obviously each of them just have your standard C13 power in. But yeah, if you look more closely at the back of the 4000 versus the 5000, there's no ventilation holes in here. So this one actually vents all of the heat from the plate amp out through these holes. And this one eventually essentially just vents the heat inside of the cabinet. It's a sealed cabinet, so it's not gonna get out. Yeah, so hopefully that's a change that they did because they wanted to make the longevity even better, even though, like I said, I haven't heard a lot of people talk about SVS plate amps dying on them. Now the real question is, how much of a difference is there in sound between these two subwoofers? And first thing that I noticed, like right away when I hooked this thing up, is for being a sealed subwoofer, this thing can play incredibly deep. Like it has no problem reaching below 20 hertz. The SB-4000 can hit 20 hertz pretty clearly, but it seemed like it rolls off a little bit faster once you hit 20. This one, it sounds like it rolls off a lot slower, and so it can play those sub 20 hertz frequencies noticeably more competently. After listening for a few days, basically watched through the Netflix Cyberpunk Edgerunners series using this subwoofer, and listened to a lot of music. After a few days, I decided it was time to set up the Mini DSP UMic 2 and REW and try to capture some measurements. Now, I am not the measurements guy, but I want to just be able to measure to quantify what I'm hearing. So I don't have an anechoic chamber. I don't have an area where I could take the sub to measure it outdoors to get anechoic style measurements, and I don't have a Klippel near field scanner. Essentially, my measurements are my room. Like, you're gonna see what I am hearing just measured and put into the form of a graph. And so it's not gonna be like, you're not gonna hear the same thing in your room unless your room is laid out almost identically to mine, like, 16 feet wide, 13 feet long, with 8-foot ceilings, and the subwoofer placed, 3 feet away from that side wall. Then maybe you'll get the exact same measurements, but still doubtful. But here's what I got. I put up both the SB-4000 and the SB-5000. And you can see I measured both subwoofers at 80, 90, 100, and 110 decibels. And that 110 decibel test was crazy. It's obviously the most noticeable difference between these two subwoofers. Like I was saying, the SB-4000, once it gets to 20 hertz, it seems to roll off a lot faster. And when you're trying to push this thing up to 110 decibels, you can definitely see a massive difference in how quickly it rolls off, because in the 10 to 7 hertz range, which I can't even believe that these have any capable or usable output in those lower frequencies. But as you can see, the 100 and the 110 decibel runs on the SB-4000, basically those two lines like overlap each other because it just doesn't have the output to actually do anything usable once you're trying to go up to 110 decibels. Whereas with the SB-5000, it just didn't have any issues. Like there's still a very distinct separation, like a 10 decibel increase in volume, even into those upper single digits hertz range. That was crazy. And then you can see also that the SB-5000 at all frequencies is a little bit louder at 20 hertz than the SB-4000 is, only by about a decibel or two. And then, the lines are pretty similar from there. One thing that I found kind of interesting, because I did have them placed exactly the same when I did the measuring, for some reason, the 70 hertz peak that I always get in my room was slightly lower with the SB-5000, which is good. I don't know why that would be, but that's a good thing. So I'm perfectly fine with that. But yeah, the output capability for a sealed subwoofer to be able to hit like over 110 decibels at I think it's at 24 hertz, or maybe it's 22 hertz is where it kind of peaks at the highest outputs. It's going well over 110 decibels. That's mind-boggling. I remember when I first got into home theater, pretty much any sealed subwoofer out there, you were lucky if you were going to get below 30 hertz with any sealed sub back in the 2000s and around 2010 and even into the early teens. And nowadays, you can get a sealed box subwoofer that's not even overly large, and it can play cleanly down below 20 hertz. Like, that's awesome. How does it sound for music? Well, part of the reason that I like sealed subwoofers is because of the fact that they pretty much always sound faster, tighter, and cleaner than any ported sub. And this thing is no different. Listening to this and listening to one of the really good test tracks for bass, and more than just bass, but bass is really a good, or this is a really good test track to use for bass to feel how fast your subwoofers are and see if the like kick drum like beat lines up with your towers. Is this song called, it's just called Drum Solo by Gojira, but every time he hits that kick drum, you hear essentially the initial smack of the hammer on the membrane of the woofer that comes through the mids and the tweeters, and then there's supposed to be the the walloping sound of the kick drum. And if your subwoofer is slow, it's not going to match up with that initial higher pitched sound of the hammer initially hitting the drum. But with this subwoofer, it seemed like it was well fast enough to keep up with my tower's very tight, punchy bass, in addition to the fact that it can just dig deep into those subterranean frequencies. So no complaints as far as the speed of the subwoofer and how like coherent it sounds when you blend it properly with your towers. And the last thing that I really got to talk about with these SVS subwoofers, which so far isn't really anything different between these two, but it's just a great value add for SVS subs in general, is the ability to completely set them up using the SVS app. The SVS app connects to your subwoofer using Bluetooth. It's compatible with iOS and Android devices, and you can basically just sit back in your listening chair and set the volume, the low pass filter, the roll off, the slope. You can choose between 6, 12, 18, 24 dB slope for the built-in crossover. You can set phase, polarity. Like, you could just sit there and change everything to try to get the subwoofer to blend in perfectly with your towers, which is so nice. Before I moved here, I used to have a pair of Rel S5 show subwoofers, and Rel kind of famously refuses to use DSP in their subwoofers because they say that it adds too much delay and like makes it so that the subwoofer doesn't sound musical. But that also means that when you want to set up a Rel subwoofer, you have to sit there and, well, you can't sit there. You have to get up, change a setting, go back down and sit in your seating position, listen for a little while, get up, change a setting, go back into your listening position and listen for a little while. And it makes tuning the subwoofer a lot more difficult. I know for most people that's not that big of an issue because you set it up once and then you leave it. But if you have kids, they might mess with the knobs on the back of the subwoofer. Or if you're like me and you're changing out speakers all the time because you're doing reviews, it's kind of a big pain in the butt to have to sit there and tune the subwoofer to match up with the front speakers all the time. So having that SVS app to be able to change all the settings is it's just a huge value add. Like, it makes it seem like their subwoofers are something that should be more expensive because of the advanced settings that they have. And there is an upcoming feature that I am super excited about, and I will probably make another video when it comes out, kind of showing the process and the results. But the new SVS subwoofers, so far it's only the SB-17, I should say the SB and PB-17, and then the SB and PB-5000. They are going to have an update that adds auto room calibration capabilities to the subwoofer. So once that feature rolls out, that's going to be another huge value add. And another good reason, if you do have like a 4000 or something from this generation or a previous generation from SVS, another good reason to upgrade. So that video will be coming out when they roll out the auto room calibration feature. And yeah, so yeah, huge value at having that SVS app. So if you have one of the, like, this generation, the previous generation SVS subwoofers, or anything older than that, is the SB-5000 a worthwhile upgrade? I would say 100% it is. If you're in the market for a subwoofer that's, I know a lot of people are going to say that an 18 by 18 by 18 inch subwoofer is huge, but some people probably think that it's a pretty reasonable size, like I do. I think that this sub would fit pretty easily in most living room setups, and absolutely, obviously, no problem in a dedicated home theater space. If you're in the market for a subwoofer right now in that $2,000-ish price range, the SB-5000 is like probably going to be like the #1 recommendation in my mind. Yeah, if you're looking for something that has a nice, clean, understated look and will blend in really well, and now that they have that new standard looking black cloth grill, like I said, I think that the old metal grill was more unique, but I think the wife approval factor is a lot higher with the new grill. And then with the auto room calibration feature coming out, it's definitely a big value increase over the previous generation subwoofers for not a huge increase in cost. They're only about $100 more expensive. Like the SB-4000, I believe the MSRP was $1,900 for the black oak and $2,000 for the gloss black, like I have here. And then with this guy, it's $2,000 for the black oak and $2,100 for the gloss. So they increased the price $100, and you're getting quite a bit more power, a larger subwoofer that plays much lower, and in the future, it supposedly is going to be coming out within the next couple of months, a built-in automatic room calibration feature for the subwoofer. So I think the SB-5000 is just a huge no-brainer. Like if you're in the market for a sub in this price range, this is the guy. So I just wanted to say thank you guys so much for watching. And I also really want to say thanks so much to SVS, because this is the first product that a manufacturer has sent me for review. So this is the first time I have gotten a review sample from a company. Now, it's not a free product that they're just giving me for doing the review. I either have to send it back or pay for it if I want to keep it. And so yeah, with that being said, does anybody want to buy a half-price SB-4000? Yeah, I actually will be selling this thing. I'm going to be listing it for sale. So if you're interested, you can actually reach out. And also, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. And thanks for watching. Bye.